It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutts. I'm your host, Mains, my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford, to Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I'm very, very well. Very refreshed. Had a day in Yorkshire today, so I had some proper air in my lungs, so no, it was all good.
Whereabouts in Yorkshire did you
go? First went to Sheffield, and then went to Leeds, and then came home through rush hour traffic.
On the M62?
Yeah.
That's a no from me. And by the way, you incorrectly didn't call it Dirty Leeds. Just thought I'd let you know.
A bizarre strategy by my car's sat-nav took me off, as I was on the 62 coming out of Leeds, took me off through Brighouse. I thought, where the hell is it taking me? It must be taking me out of a traffic hotspot. There must be queues. Yeah, that's great. And then it put me back on the 62 in a queue. So I was like, well, thanks for that. It was lovely to see Brighouse. Never seen it before. Lovely brick houses. Lovely, very Yorkshire look to it. But what have you just done for me? Nothing. Bad car.
I haven't been to Leeds very often. When I have, been very drunk. Probably the most drunk I've ever been. But we won't go into that story. Mike, you, Ian Botham, spew all over floors and driving home. Draw your own conclusions.
That was a white knuckle ride.
Neil, you got in the car. Neil, let's be honest right now. In terms of Waxing Lyrical, the season starts here. To let you all know, plan for the next few weeks. Neil is going to be hitting us hard with his fantasy rankings. We're going to start next week with our division previews. We're going to give you some draft strategies, and we're going to give you predictions pre and post reviews. So today we're going to give you some NFL news. Neil is going to give us his fantasy rankings for quarterbacks, and then we're going to give you our pre deep dive predictions. So these are hot takes bound to go wrong. We have 3 each. Without much research we've done so far on the divisions, some things that we believe will happen in said divisions. So in theory, right now, Neil, we are basically weekly from now until March.
Yeah, we've. I think this off-season has been our most lax to date. Generally, I think we can put this down to a variety of reasons: other commitments, lack of anything real to talk about, general laziness. In some order.
We'll let the listeners, I nearly said viewers, which would have been weird, decide which order they want to put them in. All I know is there's no excuses now. We've been rested, and now it's time to put in them hard yards and get ourselves over the line.
Yeah, this isn't like an England Central contract rested. We're not being paid £1.5 million to play one test match in 11 months and then get rested for 2020s. No, we are here. We've signed on. We're logged in. We will never log off. Let's do this.
Let's start, Neil, with some NFL news. Neil, a couple of NFL stories that we thought we'd best talk about. First one is a good story. Second one is a complete and utter shit show. First one is Carl Nassib coming out as a homosexual man. What I like best about this story is that, in my opinion, it's not a story. I think that maybe even as short as 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this would have been major news. Loads of meatheads saying that it was, going to destroy locker rooms and, the world was about to end. And there was none of that. There was just a lot of, okay, thanks. Hopefully that means loads more people are going to live their lives as they should, not hidden, and feel comfortable enough to do it. I commend Carl Nassib. He's done what every person should, and that's live their life as they wish, as they want, and not be afraid of repercussions related to it.
Agreed. I mean, hopefully we can get to a situation soon that who cares? It's not
correct. It's not news.
I'm straight, I'm gay, I'm bi, who cares? We're not there. And I think we do have to accept the NFL, as many renowned commentators and writers have said, is a cocoon. And this cocoon is largely populated by old white men.
Yes.
I'm not saying they're all dinosaurs with, Neanderthalic opinions regarding sexuality, but I think it's fair to assume that maybe these aren't the most enlightened people. So hopefully as the NFL, the cocoon expands and opens up and allows some more younger perspectives into it, it becomes more open and more in line with where we are as a society. As you say, fantastic. Hats off to Carl Nassib. Hopefully, this will lead to a lot more people feeling, comfortable enough coming out and saying it. But as I say, the goal here is that ultimately it doesn't matter because we're not concerned. Because ultimately, it's none of our business. It's
Correct.
no one's business.
No,
but hats off, Carl.
He felt comfortable to do it, and we commend him for it. But if he didn't, that's also fine, right? Like, I'm not going to lose anything on it. But it was last week, but we did want to talk about it because we think it's an important thing that happened, and so we wanted to bring it up. Another important thing that happened was yesterday. The Washington football team received air quotes punishment in relation to their toxic workplace over the past decade by being fined $10 million, which is a lot of money, but isn't a lot of money. The day before yesterday, obviously in a massive coincidence, Daniel Snyder's wife Tanya was made CEO of Washington football team. I'm sure that was not related. And now, in theory, based on the findings, which weren't written down, obviously, why would they be? They are now going to allow Tanya to take over day-to-day operations while Dan focuses on stadium issues, I think was what the press release said. I have many thoughts on this, Neil, but I'm going to let you go first.
I have none of principle. Dan Snyder is one of the most reprehensible people on the planet. I think. The long and illustrious history of that football team is replete with bigoted idiots who think they can do whatever the hell they want because they own a football team. He is the latest incarnation of such people like, George Preston Marshall. It's just ironic that this most insipid individual is also the least successful of all these other bigoted old fools who've owned Washington. So that's amusing. It's an absolute whitewash. In fact, it's £25 of whitewash in a £5 bag. $10 million to Daniel Snyder is absolutely nothing. It's papering over the cracks, and it's another example of why women, victims, don't feel they can come forward. This has not been settled satisfactorily for the women involved. And all we have to say that it's not a toxic workplace anymore is, the boss is a lady now. Horse shit.
There's always a major problem with fandom, right? And the major problem with fandom is that at some point, usually in your childhood, you decide to support a team of a sport. At that point in time, you don't care who owns them. You only care if the team wins or loses, right? Like, that's just the way of the world. But you get older and you find these things out, and you find out horrible things that have happened in that franchise, and you think, this makes me sick. And, but I don't want to care, because I only really want to care about what the team do on the field, because that's why I want to support them. But that's tough, right? Like, there's people whose lives have been ruined either by Daniel Snyder directly or on his watch, both of which should be fireable offences. And you can say, well, he's an owner, how do you fire him? Well, it's dead easy, because 31 owners just say, I don't want him here anymore. At the moment, he still makes them money. He must do, because otherwise you wouldn't have a job. Because don't tell me that you couldn't sell Washington. One of the richest franchises in the world one of the most recognisable franchises in the NFL in that nation's capital. It's not a difficult sell. I'm sure Jeff Bezos would buy them in about 30 seconds, for example. Although, not 100% sure that's one of the greatest humans on the planet either. It's tough, right? Because they have, in recent past, probably due to the fact of massive pressure / PR, have hired people of colour, females, into very senior positions, and in theory have started to do things successfully on the field for the first time in, I don't know, forever. So it's tough. I mean, what I would say is, if you have an athletic subscription, please read David Aldridge's thing, because David highlights a very good point that he ain't being sold, and this team's makes a couple of deals, and they're going to be playing deep into January. Probably not this year, maybe not even next year, but maybe the year after, right? And that's going to be, it's tough, right? Because that's how it goes. I don't think he should own the team. I don't think he's a very nice human. I know nothing of his wife. I hope she's a wonderful person. She has a major flaw in her personality. She's married to her husband. I think other people in positions of power seem like good people. So I wish them the best. I don't wish Daniel Snyder the best. And that's an issue, because he owns the franchise that I've supported since I was 7 years of age, which is, unfortunately, a fucking long time ago.
See, it's just all these appointments start with Ron Rivera, bringing in a new culture, changing the culture. The play-by-play announcements, the senior management, senior front office officials, all, as you say, people of either people of colour, people from different ethnic backgrounds, people of different genders. That's great. Daniel Snyder runs the Washington team. And I don't care. You can give anyone these titles all you want. Yeah. We've seen in the past, Daniel doesn't sit down and let other people do their jobs. He's a meddling moron. So, yeah, you've basically, the NFL, have slapped them on the wrist and said, don't do it again, and left the same idiot in charge. Little preview. It'll happen again.
In relation to the quote-unquote punishment, Washington didn't break any salary cap rules because there wasn't a salary cap, and lost $30 million against their salary cap. They were found to have a toxic working environment with sexual harassment throughout the organisation, and were fined $10 million.
10 years later, so inflation-wise.
Inflation-wise. So, I mean, we could talk about it forever, Neil, but let's not.
I don't want to. Makes me ill.
Me either. Let's get on to what we're here for, which is previews and the season starting. And we're going to start with your quarterback fantasy rankings. So Neil is, let's be honest, fantasy aficionado, friend to the great and good, writer for some of the best websites in relation to fantasy content in the world, and also my friend. One of those is important and the other one isn't. I'll let you decide which one. But what I asked of Neil was to get his thoughts on his fantasy rankings by position over the next, 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to look at quarterback, we're going to look at running back, we're going to look at wide receiver. We're going to go heavy on Neil's favourite position of tight end. And each one, what we'll do is Neil will give his top 10. We will then discuss it in relation, probably, and today, relation to Fantasy Pros ADP scores. So, Neil, without further ado, please give me your top 10 QBs for this year. 10 to 1, 1 to 10, you decide.
I will go 10 to 1, and I just want to note that the list I gave you before, I have made a change because I've realised I made a crucial error. because this is obviously fantasy-wise. So I will start with number 10, Matthew Stafford.
Yep.
Probably playing with the best supporting cast of his career, certainly with the best offensive mind of his career. Expect him to have a very good season. I was going to say a career year, then I remembered he's thrown for 5,040 touchdowns in a season, so that's not going to happen. Problem with Matt Stafford, and the reason, the thing is with all these other fancy quarterbacks is not particularly, not a functional rusher. So he's going to have to get by on touchdowns and yards, but I think he's got a good chance to. Okay. Number 9, and this one, he'd be in my top 9. He'd be my 9th best quarterback, full stop, at the moment. That's Ryan Tannehill, who was mocked by many, including me, when he went to Tennessee. He's been nothing short of fantastic for 2 years. Now he has A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So, don't see why you'd hate that. Number 8, I've got Dak Prescott. Maybe they aren't. Dak Prescott was excellent when they were terrible last year. Dallas were awful when he wasn't there. So, I have him at 8. I would expect him to be higher. But I'm just looking at this now saying what I know. So, number 7, I have Kyler Murray. Because again, fantasy-wise, he was very, very good last year. Then he got hurt, and we saw his rushing drop. And that's when you realise how much of his production came from his rushing. Now, we may come to this when we speak about Arizona. I would not be stunned if they don't show some serious progression this year, then Kingsbury's gone. Because it's almost like you hire a losing head coach and he doesn't turn your franchise around. You start questioning, what the hell have we done here? And maybe that's where they're going. 6. See, this is the top 6. I'm not going to lie to you. With a couple of obvious exceptions, it's interchangeable. This is very fluid. All I'll say is number 1 is number 1, and nothing's knocking him off that. The others are going to be in one order or another, I think. So we'll go Lamar Jackson. We know what he's about. Can he improve as a passer? Does he have enough weapons to supplement the fact we know he's going to get there on the ground? I don't know. Josh Allen was last year a fluke. Don't think it was. But can he produce it again this year? Plus, is he going to run the ball the same he did 2 years ago? Because his rushing was down last year, but he still called this number in the red zone. Russell Wilson. It was so good. 10 weeks we saw Russell Wilson we've always wanted to see. Then they throttled him. All I'm hearing about reports is, this offense, it's very like the Rams. It'll suit Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll. Okay? Tom Brady. I'm not writing Tom Brady off. I'm writing here. Tom Brady doesn't run, obviously, but Tampa Bay passed the ball an awful lot. So could he be a fantasy viable quarterback because he gets there on volume, yardage, and touchdowns? Yeah, because that's what he does. 2 is Aaron Rodgers, because he's Aaron Rodgers. Where he plays this year is still up in the air. I don't know. Number 1 is Patrick Mahomes, and he won't convince me otherwise. Until Patrick Mahomes' arm is falling off, he is my quarterback 1 in any format and in any ranking you care to ask me to name.
Neil, so I guess the question when you look at your ranking, I'm going to give you 10-1 now on ADP from Fantasy Pros. So 10 is Jalen Hurts, 9 is Tom Brady, 8 is Aaron Rodgers, 7 is Justin Herbert, 6 is Russell Wilson, 5 is Dak Prescott, 4 is Lamar Jackson, 3 is Kyler Murray, 2 is Josh Allen, and 1 is Patrick Mahomes. So it seems as though Fantasy Pros from, I guess it's Yahoo, CBS, Fantrax, and FFC, the people who are drafting are valuing rushing or expecting rushing more than maybe you are. Was that a conscious decision by you to go down that avenue? Because in theory, your quarterbacks 4 through 1 are throwers. Now, although you have Allen, Murray, and Jackson in your top 10, they're not as high.
Yeah, it's as I say, this with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, the rest of it is fluid. These are like the 10 quarterbacks I would want. Justin Herbert is just outside this list because A, he's a rookie, we've only seen it once, and B, they might be better in real life, so therefore they might not be as good in fantasy. Jalen Hurts, I cannot shake the feeling that Jalen Hurts does not start every game. I'll give you 2 reasons why. 1, he's not a very good passer, and he might stink. And 2, Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks do not start every game. Very, very rare it happens.
Yeah, very good point.
It would take... We saw last year with Aaron Rodgers, he became a very viable fantasy option, a top-end one, because of an absurdly high touchdown rate. So they can get there. This is why I say it wouldn't stun me if, especially Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, if these people finished higher than where I've said them. This is a fluid document, as I say. The only thing that I'm unshakable on is that I will always take Patrick Mahomes first, because we've seen he can throw 5,050 without even trying. It helps that Kansas City are pass heavy, and it helps that they will pass the ball even when they're leading. But if you were to ask me on a general fantasy rule, if you're not going to take one of the stud quarterbacks early, what are you looking for in a later round quarterback? Well, I don't think the later round quarterback is a viable option anymore. I think it's more mid round, because you've got so many of these young running quarterbacks. It would not stun me if Jalen Hurts plays all 17 games. Could he be a top 6 quarterback? Probably, because he'd get there on the ground, if not through the air. The one person I did think about putting in, but I just have too many questions about the offense, it's Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan's a bloody borderline great quarterback, but Atlanta are going to stink this year. So is he going to throw 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns? Probably not.
So in your rankings, you have no concern that week 1, Aaron Rodgers is under centre in Green Bay? That's just a thing, right? It's a load of bravado, toing and froing right now, but come the start of the season, he will be playing.
I think there are few more petty and bitter individuals in the NFL than Aaron Rodgers.
It's awesome.
Ask Jeff Janis for details. But fantasy-wise, when it comes to projections and when it comes to thinking, you have to paint a rosy-coloured view to an extent, because I refuse to sit and write articles about someone who's injury-prone and use the term injury-prone. Don't draft him, he'll get hurt, because I'll tell you why. Because I don't know shit about injuries. I don't know the ins and outs of Aaron Rodgers' contract situation. I don't know how much he hates Gutenkunst. I don't know how much he hates the entire front office. I don't know. Do I think if I was told you're going to lose $30 million if you don't play, I think I'd play. But even though I am petty, small-minded, I'm nowhere near as petty and small-minded as Aaron Rodgers.
Lamar Jackson at 6. Obviously went
6,
he went from MVP to not quite as good last year. Do you expect a bounce back up to that MVP level, or was last year more a standard Lamar Jackson season?
I think could it be somewhere in between the two, because he still wasn't terrible last year.
No, he wasn't terrible. Far from it.
Yeah.
No, far from it. He wasn't terrible. He just wasn't the MVP of the league, right?
No, because quarterbacks do not throw touchdowns at a 9% rate. It doesn't happen. An excellent rate is 6%. That's somewhere around where Russell Wilson throws or Aaron Rodgers. They don't throw at 9%. Now, Lamar Jackson in an off-season still rushed for 1,000 yards and actually rushed for more touchdowns than he did the year before. He was also affected by COVID a couple of times. The team was riddled with it in places. His offensive line was not great. He lost Ronnie Stanley, obviously, and they didn't replace Marshall Yonder. Now, if you're going to be a good running quarterback, especially the scheme they run with like counter bash and things like that, and quarterback power, you need good, solid guard play. They didn't get it because, I tell you this, if you lose a Hall of Fame guard, they're not easy to replace. So they think they've not replaced Marshall Yonder, but at least taken steps by signing Kevin Zeitler. So this offensive line could look a bit more like a Ravens offensive line. So again, would I be stunned if Lamar Jackson was the overall quarterback 1 in fantasy? No. If he can take a few steps forward in the passing game, so that means does Rashard Bateman help? Does Mark Andrews get back to where he was? Is Marquise Brown even a thing we should care about in fantasy? Hint, no. These are all questions. We do know that Lamar Jackson is always going to be up there because of the rushing floor. And also because, let's be honest, he's starting every game if he's healthy. Jalen Hurts, I can't make the same confident boast of.
Patrick Mahomes is gone. You want a rushing quarterback. Do you take Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, or Lamar Jackson?
I take Josh Allen because he has the advantage of, excuse me, he plays on a team that want to pass the ball, want to run the ball more efficiently, not run the ball more. Plus, he's the red zone, he's the goal line back. Lamar Jackson, as I say, is Lamar Jackson. Ultimately, when it breaks down, I think Josh Allen's polish as a passer is more impressive than Lamar's. And Kyler Murray, as I say, while he does get an awful lot of red zone carries, you look at the moves they've made. Are they bringing in competition? Not competition, but a complement for him in the red zone, like James Conner, who has the 20th most red zone touches over the last 4 years in the NFL, despite often not playing as a full-time role. And plus, we have to factor in the consideration that Cliff Kingsbury lives to make sure his kicker is the highest scoring point scorer in fantasy football when it comes to the 2-yard line. That's a problem. Whereas Josh Allen, Brian Daboll are a little bit more, now we're going for it.
Awesome, Neil. Thank you. Next week, running backs, but for now, top 10 Neil QBs over and out. So, Neil, we're going to start division previews next week in the classic never eat shredded week concept. AFC North will be the starter. But before that, before we do the deep dive and before we do, the fancy players to get and avoid in each team and the over-under and blah-de-blah, we wanted to give people some takes in terms of, without doing the study, what are the things that jumped out to us and think these are the predictions right now before we've done our massive research into this to understand professionally what we think. Let's just be idiots and shout to the clouds on what we think the predictions are. So we have 3 each. Neil, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I was a year early with my prediction last year. The Vikings will be going to the title game this year. Now, I said last year that maybe they weren't... It's not the most entertaining thing because they want to establish the run, and we know that I don't agree with this mentality. But if you're going to do it, commit to it. And they have, and they did. And they've bolstered their offensive line. Partly you could say they got lucky because Christian Darrisaw fell to them. They were going to try and get him, but then they thought, we'll trade back and see what we get. Oh, we'll still get him. I refuse to believe Mike Zimmer is going to allow that defense to be this bad 2 years running. They've got Danielle Hunter back. Whether he's happy, I don't know. But I think the defense is going to be better. If we don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers, so who's the competition in the NFC North? The Bears, with the committing to the Patrick Mahomes scheme by starting Andy Dalton over Justin Fields. Congratulations, you're fired. The Lions could be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And Jordan Love over Rodgers, or instead of Rodgers, is a massive downgrade if that does happen. The door's open to take the West, to take the North, and then once they're in the tournament, who knows? So that's what I'm thinking now. I was a year early. I'm going back to the well because, like our friend, the Podfather, I do not have take. I do not have, I'm not trapped into my takes. I do not have take PTSD.
Love it, Neil. Love it. My first one is much more negative than Neil's. I believe right now that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be the worst team in the AFC North. For, I guess, as long as we can remember, the Steelers have, with the exception of maybe battling with the Baltimore Ravens, have been the class of this division. They do have some talented pieces and a decent defense, but I think the other teams are ahead of them on offense now. I do. I think Ben Roethlisberger is a corpse, like Undertaker, like in his last matches corpse, like can't move around corpse. That's an issue. They have no offensive line. It's really bad. and they decided that with no offensive line and a corpse of a quarterback, they draft a running back first round in this year's NFL draft. Does that skew my anger towards the team? Probably. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Right now, the Steelers will be the worst team in the AFC North.
Yeah, you're not winning a division. You're not advancing through the playoffs. You're not winning the Super Bowl, averaging 20 points a game on offense. And they'll be lucky to get to 20 points in a lot of their games. Their defense is excellent. We know this. But what do we also know about defense? Doesn't last forever.
No. It's very year by year, right?
Yeah, a much more year by year obstacle than offense. The offensive line is a tragedy, and they've let it get this way. No one else. They have let it atrophy while letting their quarterback age at the same time. That's an organisational problem. We know that Pittsburgh, if there's one thing they can do, my God, can they draft wide receivers?
Yeah.
That's great. Do you want to look at a lineman and, maybe see something here? It's not something where Colbert is at his best. Now, I know quarterbacks who've had serious injury take a year and then come back, and then they're better. The next year after their year back is better. Yeah, not 39-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
Not 39-year-olds who've taken the amount of punishment that Ben Roethlisberger. Shoulder feels better than ever. Elbow feels better than ever. Yeah, but next week it'll be your back. Then it'll be your knee. Then it'll be your pinky. It's always something, mate. I'm terribly sorry. I can't. Something about the Bengals. I think they'll be great fun on offense. Their defense is still a question mark. But I do not see Pittsburgh challenging for this division. So I'm with you. I don't think it's not the boldest take.
No.
It would be strange to see it happen, but judging by how they've let the roster get this way, it'll be piss funny.
True. Neil, what's your second prediction?
It's linked to that, and that is that the Cleveland Browns will be winning that division. And I don't have to defend this take to anyone. They got further in the playoffs last year than their two divisional rivals, one of whom they beat the snot out of. They then had the luxury of going into this season with a third place schedule. Thanks to the beautiful. What did they do last year? They showed you this is what we're going to do on offense. It's going to take a little while, but the pieces are going to gel eventually. Their defense let them down. So what did they do? They invested in the defense. They brought in the safeties and free agency. They've got Grant Delpit coming back. They brought in reinforcements along the defensive line to help Myles Garrett. I like the fact that everything at Cleveland seems to be pointing in the same direction. Now, Baltimore are Baltimore. We know they're not going to go away. The Bengals might be more entertaining than they've been in previous years, and the Steelers are a train wreck, as we say. So, your AFC North champions for the first time, because I believe the last time they won the division, it wasn't the AFC North, it was the Central.
Central won it, yeah.
Yeah. So the first time AFC North champion, Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, tough to argue, Neil. I like the coaches, but I think Stefanski in the rest of the division. But I think Stefanski's excellent. I have a lot of time for Baker Mayfield. I think he was unduly criticised at times, and I like his chutzpah. And also the Chubb, Odell Beckham Jr. If you can get him on the same page, is still someone who makes plays. And as you said, Myles Garrett and the rest of the team on defense are now much stronger. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a AFC Championship team. Obviously, probably getting beat by the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, my second one is, Neil, by Black Monday, which for those who are unaware is the first Monday after the end of the regular season, 2 NFC East teams will have fired their coaches. And I'll be honest, that there's only 3 teams that it can be, because Washington ain't firing Ron Rivera. There is a serious concern in Dallas around Mike McCarthy, in my opinion, i.e. he's not very good. They should never have hired him. I've been on this bandwagon for a decade. Hopefully someone will listen to me, or maybe they won't, and then Dallas will still be crap. I'm completely unconvinced by Joe Judge. They were better towards the end of the season last season, but still don't think they're very good. Okay, they've decided to surround Daniel Jones with lots of talented players. The issue is they've still got Daniel Jones as their quarterback. And I'll be honest, Neil, I'm really, really, really concerned by your head coach in the kind of Jim Zorn vibe, kind of head coach vibe. So I wouldn't be surprised if two of these teams are terrible, and also two coaches are fired.
It's not a good division, as evinced by the fact that a division where three teams had losing records were still in the hunt for the playoffs in week 17 of last year. I think an awful lot has to go wrong for Sirianni to go one and done. Because if they go one and done, it's going to start to look like, well, I'm sorry, but there's only one constant here, and that's you, Howie. And we know that Roseman is going to want to insulate himself from that. So it'll be, can I get another year out of this clown? Especially as you're going to be bringing in these players, and in theory, in 2022, you're going to have 3 first-round picks for them. It would help to have a system in place, but that would imply that Howie Roseman doesn't spaff these picks up a wall. Joe Judge, I love how bitter the Giants are still about what the Eagles did in Week 17. Yeah, I know you're a 6-10 team, and you didn't get into the playoffs because the Eagles grow up. Yeah, grow up. Dallas are great. But one thing we know, there's no partnership between the Dallas Cowboys as head coach and the offensive coordinator. We know there's no partnership in that way because what do they like to do? Fire the coach, promote the coordinator. If their offense is firing, but their defense is as tragic as it was last year, even with the new coaches, the new coaching staff, they'll fire McCarthy and they'll promote Kellen Moore, probably by Thanksgiving, maybe. Especially if Mike McCarthy makes a tit of himself on Hard Knocks.
Well, yeah, and of course, for those who are unaware, it was announced today that the Dallas Cowboys will be on Hard Knocks, which is both awful and also possibly hilarious because, I don't think that someone like Mike McCarthy is designed for such an event.
No. He will say something or do something. Wish it wasn't. I mean, the worst thing that Sean McVay did last year was go in a pool with his top off. Which, I'm not being funny, if I look like Sean McVay, I do all the time. I don't want to see Mike McCarthy in a pool.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. Let's not be doing that again. Let's not have a repeat of that.
Yeah, I think we can confidently say the NFC East is probably going to be shit again.
I think I'm not talking about it. Because I think 3 teams are guaranteed to be shit. I'm not 100% sure the other one is guaranteed to be shit. The problem for that team is they have a first place schedule. Neil, final prediction, please.
Well, my final prediction is actually flying in the face of what I know to be your final prediction. And I'm going to say that the Detroit Lions are on the clock. Because this team, Penei Sewell, is an excellent foundational piece. Sorry, Lockie Ferguson's just taken a hat-trick for Yorkshire against Lancashire. So, to you. It's an excellent foundational piece, but what quarterback are you protecting here? Jared Goff. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver core. Oh, my God. Well, you've got TJ Hawkinson, that's all right as well. Well, are we solid on defence? No, we're a shit show there as well. Oh, sweet Jesus. It's okay, though. Maybe we can scheme some offence. Who's the offence coordinator? It's Anthony Lynn. Oh, sweet Jesus. Yeah, this is not a good team. Not a good team. And I think they're going to be behind a lot of games and could get the snot beaten out of them. The other team, who you're going to come to, are an absolute rogue nation in the NFL. But I don't know. Okay.
Neil shared a tweet earlier from Mike Silver. I'm just going to read it now. New Lions head coach Dan Campbell. I told the players, honestly, day one, I said, look, I'm not carrying your toilet paper around. I'm not going to wipe your butt. You're going to wipe your own butt. You handle it, and I'll treat you like men until you prove otherwise. More to come soon. First of all, I don't know what the fuck that means. It's like the bite your knees or ankles? I can't remember.
Bite your kneecaps.
Yeah, like what? Sorry, who? Pardon? Yes, they are not a very good team. I think that is true. I mean, yeah, TJ Hawkinson may get 7 million targets. That could be true. Yeah, they're not good. But I'm just going to dive into mine because my rogue nation on the clock is the one and only Houston Texans, who, if in the opposite of if Carlsberg did off seasons, the Texans, if anything could go wrong, it did go wrong for the Texans. Some of it was out of their control. You will have noticed, obviously, in Neil's fantasy rankings at QB, that a certain Houston Texans QB was not on the list because we don't expect him to play this year, and hope he doesn't actually until all that stuff is dealt with. They then had one of the bizarrest free agent periods of all time, signing some of the weirdest and wonderful players ever, and obviously didn't have any draft picks because they got rid of them all to sign players to make them, one of the worst teams in the league. So I understand why Neil would go with the Detroit Lions on the clock, but I think the Detroit Lions can win 1 or 2 games. I am not 100% sure the Texans can win a single game.
It's just been baffling. It's not let's be honest, we don't know about Nick Caserio because he came from the Patriots, and we never know how much of the Patriots is Bill and how much is other people. But if you tell me the first chance he's got to build a roster, and this is the roster he's building, if by a man's work then you know him, then this man's a pile of horse shit, because this is a terrible roster and would probably have been a terrible roster in 2017. I mean, it looks like my dynasty team.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not that. It's worse than your dynasty team, and that says a lot because you consistently pick first in our dynasty.
Yeah, it's just absolutely baffling. It comes to something when you think, my God, I bet the Texans fans miss Bill O'Brien. I'm terribly sorry, but David Culley is not an inspiring head coach. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a lovely fella. He's another from the Andy Reid tree. Yeah, that's great. So what? He's 63.
Neil, let's be honest. If we spoke to, I guess, NFL fans, not experts, and said to them, can you name the Houston Texans head coach? I reckon 60% of them wouldn't know his name.
Probably. The quarterback situation, as we know, we don't know, because it's up in the air for various reasons that I don't want to go into. So what are we saying here then? Tyrod Taylor? We've seen what Tyrod Taylor does the last few years. Well, how about the rookie Davis Mills? Yeah, he fell to the 3rd round or the 4th round for a reason. Brandon Cooks should see a lot of targets. From who? Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills? Great. What about the running backs? Mark Ingram, David Johnson, still one of the highest paid running backs in the league. Philip Lindsay, vastly underrated but small and breaking down. Okay, Rex Burkhead. Defense. Well, as the classy organisation they are, you'll remember they released JJ Watt because they were classy and replaced him with what? You have nothing. No, I see what you mean, but you just wonder, maybe there's boys. Ultimately, the Patriots way of no one outside this room believes in us. Yeah, they don't know. There's a reason. Maybe it works. Maybe they sneak a win or 2 or 3. But yeah, it's horrible.
It is horrible. We will get on to over-unders and look at schedules when we get on to the AFC South later on in the month. But until then, Neil, we've done our hot takes, we've done your QB rankings. Is there anything you would like to share with people or want people to read before we're back next week?
Yes, the last couple of weeks I've made my debut appearance for 4 for Football, or 4 for 4 for Football, whatever it's called. Excellent site, some fabulous other writers. It has spawned such works as the likes of Denny Carter, Alex Gelher. Lots of talented writers there. Really, really happy to be chiming in with their pieces. I've written about, so far, Josh Jacobs. He's a sell. Don't get him in the fantasy. Chase Edmonds. Be careful what you wish for. Noah Fant. and Jarvis Landry, who I'm not touching. I'm actually hopeful that my next piece might be a bit more positive, but as the editor did say, it looks like Neil doesn't like anyone in fantasy this year. Still with the other sites, I'm working on a piece for RotoViz about 5 tight ends who've risen in ADP in the last few weeks and 5 who are plummeting. Hint, one of them is called Chris and plays for the New York Jets. Well, he did when I started writing it, because I don't think he will. I'm going to be writing a ton of pieces for Number Fire as well, and once the season starts, I'm going to be writing a weekly fantasy preview for the LA Chargers, which is great because it gives me an opportunity and an excuse to buy a midnight blue Keenan Allen Chargers jersey.
Amazing, Neil. Amazing. Neil is at N13. I am at Mandy7. Combine me at waxing_lyrical. The season has started, people. Brace yourselves. It's going to be a bumpy ride. These top guys are out.
Yorkshire.
Boo.